went to the laundromat to clean my money. I only came home with dryer sheets. I guess you could call it a dry run. All right, let's talk about it. This is The Real Story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates talk about all things real estate. Hey, Sherry.
Hey, Adam, how are you?
I'm good. It was a nice kind of nexus between a dad joke and our topic for today.
I'm wondering if people actually know where we're going. I know where we're going with this, but
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk about some financial crimes act a little bit later in our
yeah,
podcast. But
yes.
before we do that, we usually start out with a little market update. What's happening in the market this week?
Well, I think the big news that came out yesterday was that Compass is acquiring uh, uh, Anywhere, the name of a company that owns a bunch of other more brokerages.
Yeah, when I first read that headline, it was confusing because I didn't realize that Anywhere was actually the name of a company, and I think it's actually a new name. I meant to go research that before we started. And it Anywhere is a company that owns a bunch of brokerage brands that you all might be familiar with.
Yep,
We both actually previously have had been at a couple of them, right?
yep.
So what are a couple that you used to be at that are
So I was at Coldwell Banker for a year. I went through their management training program and decided that working for a corporate brokerage was not for me. And I started my career at a little company called United California Brokers that was acquired by Sotheby's. And I spent about 5 or 6 years there, maybe 7 years there.
Yeah. And I started my career with Better Homes and Gardens, and I think that most of you have remembered the gold blazers from the 80s and 90s. Century 21 is one of those brands.
Century
Uh,
21.
yeah, I was really disappointed I didn't get a green blazer when I was at Better Homes and Gardens. That was like
Oh, no.
color. But branding and marketing is always kind of interesting. I mean, it was weird to work for a brokerage that most people thought of as a magazine, and in some ways, what a great nexus because Better Homes and Gardens was as a magazine was is a wonderful place to see images and get ideas for how to remodel your house or
Yeah.
improve your garden. I mean, just some really core topics for every homeowner.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and So that wasn't necessarily why I went to go work for them, but that was always this kind of weird nexus.
Yeah.
Uh, this is kind of an interesting news that we're still trying to sort out because the Anywhere brand family represents a significant portion of real estate brokerages in
Yeah.
northern North America, and they
Yeah.
actually have international offices. Especially I see C21 on the Tour de France as an advertiser, so I assume they have a big presence uh,
Yes.
in Europe.
Yeah.
Uh,
Compass was already the number one, had the number one market share in the United States. And so this $4.6 billion acquisition and all these big names like Coldwell Banker and Sotheby's and Century 21 and BHG, that, I mean, just massively increases their market share.
Yeah, I read an article in Inman that they were interviewing Compass agents, and the impression of the Compass agents wasn't so much that it was about market share, but was about control and power within the market
Mm.
space. And
Hmm.
those of you who've been paying attention, you know that Compass in some good ways and maybe in some controversial ways has definitely been a disruptor.
Hmm.
Uh, they sometimes seem to present themselves more like a tech company that sells real estate,
Yep.
and bringing some tools available to their agents and then by extension their clients in the home search process and listing process. But they also have some practices that I don't think are in the consumer's best interest, and that's my opinion. That may or may not be factual. I mean, their behavior is factual, whether it's in nets positive for consumers, I think
Yeah.
still yet to be seen.
You've talked about that before. Do you want to elaborate on that
Yes.
too?
Uh, so Sherry and I have a bias that the best way to market a home is to get the best price for it is to cast your net as wide as possible, advertising it to a full the full market space on a multiple listing service. So that gets pushed out to realtor.com and Redfin and Zillow and all those other sites.
And I don't think it's just to interrupt real quick. It's not just a bias, it's a documentable fact. NAR does research around this, and they have proven that if you will make more money on your house if you put it on the open market.
And there's also another aspect of it, not only for the seller, but for the buyer. Buyer should have, should is a maybe not the right word. Um, there seems to be some equity about who gets to see a listing,
Mhm,
and my bias would be towards a that everybody should be able to get to see every listing.
mhm.
And there's a risk of not sharing it openly that you might be violating some fair housing rules. Not necessarily, but there could be some accusations that way if you're not sharing the listing everywhere. So Compass makes the argument that buyers or sellers rather have the right to market their home however they want. They have other priorities, and I actually do resonate with that. Not
Yeah.
not everybody wants to have a for sale sign in front of their house or to
Mhm.
have an open house. But
Or to have people traipsing through, even if it's by appointment.
yeah, but it's hard to sell a house if people can't see it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So, with the changes in the laws over the last 18 months, where buyers now are required to sign a buyer agreement with their agent, that they are committing to working with an agent, regardless of what brokerage they are. So, Compass has enabled a practice where they will hold listings in-house that essentially they're controlling access to that listing, not making them as easily available to agents from other brokerages, with the hopes that they will get buyers to sign with their agents so they can see all those coming soon listings.
Yep.
And it might sound like I have, I'm bitter because they have a good marketing plan. Hats off if they're doing a better job of serving their buyers because of their actual service.
Yeah.
But by controlling the inventory, they're manipulating the market, manipulating buyers, and manipulating sellers.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, this is one of the reasons why people have such a low opinion of real estate agents because they feel like we are manipulating the market for our
Yep.
own purposes.
Yep. For our own benefit.
Yeah. So if Compass, if this merger, which would be a major merger that the Department of Justice needs to review in light of antitrust, and they approve it, we could see a dramatic change in how properties are accessible. They potentially could become such a powerful force that associations like the National Association of Realtors or online portals like Zillow
Yeah.
are going to have a bloodbath in competition for the power of the industry, and the loser will absolutely be the consumer.
Yeah.
That this is not a situation where the consumer will win because if Compass gains more power, they are definitely doing it for themselves and not for the consumer. They've made that clear.
Yeah. So I think it's important for us to say that the Department of Justice still has to approve this acquisition. And as of yesterday, they have not done so. So it's in the works.
Yeah, it was just announced. So, everything that we just said, there's a whole lot of asterisks next to it about what's going
Yeah,
to happen in the future. So pay attention to this space. When we have more information, we'll bring it back up. Uh,
absolutely.
but more power to the independent broker. All right.
Yeah.
That was a selfless play, wasn't it? Um, anyway, our topic today is equally as exciting and
Oh,
uplifting.
yes. Yes.
Yo ho. Um, we're going to transition to some changes that are coming regarding anti-money laundering.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much changes, but strengthening and further enforcement of some current policies.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a little bit about what do I mean by anti-money laundering? What is?
Adam, what do you mean by anti-money
Oh, I
laundering?
was asking you the question. So, our
Financial crimes, I believe, is what
financial,
the U.S.
yeah,
government calls it.
yeah.
But
So
we refer to it as an anti-money laundering aspect of our business.
there's a policy which has been abbreviated to FinCEN. So Fin
Mhm.
from financial, and
Yeah.
then CEN being crimes enforcement.
Network.
Network, yeah, FinCEN.
Yeah.
I drew a blank. I was going to say department, FinCEN. And there's some new regulations that are going in or furthering some current regulations that are in
Mhm.
place starting December 1st with regards to real estate transactions. So that's
Yeah.
how we got into it.
Yeah.
And the Fed is the Department of Justice is trying to monitor people trying to money that's been created from illegal activity to make
Hmm.
it legal money that could be used every other place. Uh,
Hmm.
and so one of the places where this has shown up is by real estate purchases. Um, so there's going to be some new requirements, FinCEN requirements on residential purchases. So, Sherry, do you want to tell us who is subject or who is excluded from these requirements when it comes to buying real estate?
Yeah, well, it is only applicable to cash transactions. So when a buyer comes in and says, I want to buy a house and I'm a cash buyer, there are no loans, no lenders involved in any of this. And so at that point, there will be a series of questions that I think we as real estate agents or the title companies will have to ask, and that is, how is the person buying the house taking title? Are they taking it as an individual? In other words, they're in their name or they in their spouse's name, or they in their whoever they're buying with, or are they buying it in a trust, or are they buying it as an LLC or a corporation or some other entity? And if they can answer yes to those questions, then that triggers what's called a real estate report.
So I'm just going backwards there for a sec. So if they are buying it as an individual or with a partner, but as real people, they
As
don't have to do this form.
they are exempt.
They're exempt. Okay,
They
so
are
this is
exempt. Yeah.
somebody who's buying as an entity. So
Mhm.
Adam Hamalian as the trustee of the um, cryptocurrency LLC.
Yes.
I sell illegal drugs LLC. Then I would be subject to filling out these requirements. Which
Yeah. And
all right.
we're kind of unclear exactly how this is going to happen. The responsibility is being placed on title companies and escrow officers to ask the right questions, fill out the right forms, and submit that documentation, I guess, to FinCEN. We reached out to our escrow officer yesterday, and they're being trained on it, but they're not really sure, I think, yet what some of those forms are going to look like, or completely what the process is going to be like.
Yeah.
That was a feeling I got from that conversation.
So I think that yeah, so I think that the goal or the hope of the policy is that they're going to do a little research into who is behind the LLCs.
Yeah.
Who so just because you might have somebody who's signing for the LLC, I think they want to know, or the trust, or whatever the entity is,
Yep.
who
Yep.
is the person that's benefiting from that trust who might
Yeah.
be controlling the money, even though
Yeah.
regardless of they're the signer or not. Um, I
I wonder if that's going to delay how long a closing takes, because when we do a cash purchase, usually it's a quick 10-day close. But if they've got to research an LLC or a corporation or something like that, I wonder what that's going to do to our timelines.
Yeah, so the little bit of experience I've had in the AML world was working with getting some money to the UK. I have a adult child that lives there, and multiple steps along the way, both in creating a bank account in the UK and in the person who did the company that did the exchange. I had to demonstrate the history of the funds that I was moving back to their source. So I had
Mhm.
to say, well, here's my income. I gradually put it in this bank account. Now I have the sum of money. I'm transferring it over. Uh,
Yep.
so I had to show not only did my wife and I have to give all our information about who we are, which
Yep.
seems like pretty common, but I also then had to show the money, and everybody along the way wanted to see where the money was. So every time I moved the money, I had to add another layer. So like when I moved it from Wells Fargo
Oh my gosh.
to Barclays, and then from Barclays to the exchanger, and then from the exchanger to the Bank of Scotland. I had to like add one more. Well, here's where my statement says that exact amount of money went out
Yeah.
of it, and here's the other statement where it went in. I
Yeah.
don't think that yet that's the level of money laundering protections that we're doing. I think that what I hear, it sounds more about the identity of the people behind the LLCs
Hmm.
or the trust or the corporation.
Hmm.
You said something interesting about it being a cash buyer. Why not a loan? Why doesn't the title escrow company need to look into to buyers who are using loans?
It's my understanding that the lenders do their own sourcing of where cash is coming from. I mean, not too long ago, we had a transaction where we were getting ready to go to docs and eventually close, and someone put $25,000 into the buyer's bank account. And it stopped the whole thing because it's like, where'd that money come from? What do you guys, why are you doing that? You know, you're not supposed to be, opening any credit accounts, buying, a $75,000 Mercedes, which is one of my stories from long ago, or moving big amounts of money in and out of your bank accounts. And I think it was something like it had something to do with the transaction and it was perfectly legitimate, but it had to be sourced. So the lenders are responsible for doing it on their end, but because there's not a lender involved and nobody's been policing it for cash purchases, I guess that's where FinCEN has stepped in.
Yeah.
I mean, is that
So
your understanding?
yeah, so I think what the title escrow guy said to us, and to be honest, I'm not 100%. I guess it's the escrow person, escrow hat that
Hmm.
monitoring all this, though it seems like it affects title if there's potentially a lien about it. Let me come back to that thought in a sec. But he said that the first line of reporting on this is the banks, traditional lenders,
Yep.
not hard money lenders or
They've
private
always,
lenders.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
hard money is
people,
different.
yeah, so people who are registered, I guess, with the SEC or whoever the banking governing body is. So they do their research, and then the second behind them is the title escrow companies to validate
Mhm.
all this information.
Yep.
Um, the and then hard money lenders, because those are private loans, they're not registered with a federal agency, securities or whatever, whoever manages that.
Yeah.
So they have to follow these same steps.
Yeah, they're considered a cash purchase.
Yeah.
I've done a few of them in my time. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, really, you're gonna. The first one I did, I was just completely suspicious that that money was going to appear, and it did, and it was all fine. And apparently, the buyer was going to refi with a traditional bank, but they wanted to be competitive and beat out other offers, so they did a hard money loan. It was, yeah, nerve-wracking at the time. Now it's like, oh yeah, hard money. But yeah, they fall under the scrutiny of FinCEN as well
So
as regular traditional cash buyers.
what about a 1031 exchange? So somebody sells a house in the
Mhm.
as an investment, not a personal home,
Mhm.
but an investment, and they want to buy another investment property, and to avoid capital gains tax,
Mhm.
they do what's called a 1031 exchange. So the funds from the sale of one property goes to an exchanger. The owner never actually touches the money,
Correct.
metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
And then when they buy the other, the funds are delivered from 1031, the exchanger rather. Are they subject to these kind
They
of
are not. They are not subject to FinCEN requirements
interest?
because the intermediary holds the money.
Yeah. All right. So the source of the funds is known because it came from a property that was already
Yeah.
known. Interesting.
Yep.
All
They
right.
are exempt. I'm sure that criminals are not doing 1031 exchanges to avoid taxes. So,
Probably not. Yeah. So, it's interesting you talk about, I mean, I don't know that I've encountered anything really illegal. There's been a few stories over the years that kind of make me scratch my head. When my first brokerage I was at, there was this story that went around that enough people retold it. I don't know what the real story was,
mhm.
but that an international buyer wanted to buy something in Orinda and showed up with cash in a duffel bag and wanted to buy a house and thought that you just brought your cash in.
Oh, that's funny.
I don't know.
That
It's
might
kind of
how that
scary.
is that
Like
how they do it in the old country?
but I mean, we're talking about, I don't know whether it was $1 million. Let's just say the cheapest place in Orinda 10 years ago. Well, I'll say 800,000 as a shack, right? But could you
Here's my
imagine walking
money.
around with that much cash in a duffel bag? And it
No.
seemed very sketchy. I,
Yeah.
you had that one you in a previous podcast you mentioned about a bridge loan guy who you went to his house and he had money available for you? Was that
Sasha, he was a
Sasha? Yeah.
money lender.
Is it hard? Yeah. Did that
Yeah.
seem suspicious to you or just weird?
Oh, it seemed totally suspicious to me. I mean, my client needed $10,000 so that they could move out of the house that they were practically losing, unfortunately. And they couldn't move until they had money to go out and put a deposit on a rental. And we couldn't close escrow so they could get their funds. And my broker said, "Oh, you should talk to Sasha." So I talked to Sasha, and Sasha made it happen.
All right.
Know
Well,
what Sasha did for a living besides doing hard money loans, but it was, I mean, it was above board in that he wrote a deed of trust, it got recorded, and he got paid back through escrow. Uh,
so yeah. So that
I,
doesn't sound illegal. That just sounds like somebody who operates outside of the traditional roles, but
I would say coming to the door and handing me a check for $10,000 and only having a dress shirt on, and smoking pot at the same time is definitely not traditional.
yeah. Well, so pot, that's an interesting topic because the laws have changed here in California to legalize marijuana and certain amount of cultivation in a residential setting. I am not an expert on this. I don't know what permits you need, so please don't quote me on this. But anecdotally, I've heard stories about this happening, and I do mean anecdotally, not my personal experience. I had a conversation with an appraiser one time who went to go do an inspection, and the homeowner was there, and they wouldn't. There was one room that was locked, that they initially weren't giving access to. And an appraiser, when they come to a house, they have to measure the whole property, and they're making assessments about the general quality. They're actually required to look for some minimum things as well, typically like smoke detectors, carbon monoxide. So they have to inspect the house. And so they asked to have access to this room, and the owner said, I was hoping that you weren't going to have to do that, but went over and unlocked it. And, immediately there's this blast of light from the grow room, and that it was a grow lights. It was a grow room full of 7 foot tall marijuana plants. And the appraiser immediately left and had to go back to their office and said, "We can't do this loan." Didn't even finish the appraisal
Yeah,
because while it's legal in California, it's still listed in a federal control and so as a federally licensed lender, they could not take the chance
yeah,
of having their asset be confiscated by the federal government, right? So they
yeah.
couldn't loan 500,000 on this $600,000 house because they could lose all 500.
We
Confiscation.
could do a whole podcast on pot stories. I mean, I sold a house in Sonoma that had two big buildings on it that the seller, who was a swim coach for a very large university, whose name I will not say on this podcast, he was, I mean, by the time the house went on the market, there was nothing in these outbuildings, but there was irrigation and there were big lights and there were locks. And I kind of naively asked him what they were for. And he goes, "Oh, I'm into, well, horticulture." And it's I was like, "Oh, I know what those are for." But I mean, my previous broker had somebody break into a house during the recession, that had sat on the market for over a year, and turned it into a grow house and just totally wrecked the house. I mean, there's story after story. I mean, I walked into a house in Concord one day on broker's tour, and they were growing pot in the backyard, and the plants were taller than I am. So.
Aside from the legality of it, grow houses are actually not, they really should be red flags because when they're putting that much moisture inside the house with
Yeah,
the humidity generated by the lights, you're actually just inviting for accelerated deterioration
yeah,
from whether it's mold or dry rot or
yeah,
just the dampness of it.
yeah.
So you should, if you're a buyer and you get a sense of it, the legality part aside, that's a whole conversation. But just from a sense of the question marks about the house, it really is a huge red flag. Looking at it, it's interesting.
Yeah,
I one time was working, moving away from pot for a moment, or maybe
from horticulture.
horticulture. Thank you. Um, I wonder what all the filters are going to do on social media when we post this podcast.
No
Well, they're
kidding.
probably not going to do anything, but prim and proper Adam and Sherry talking
This
about
is the
things that
reality of real estate.
we have no
The things they don't tell you in real estate school.
exactly. I had a contractor one time who I worked with on a couple projects. In fact, if those of you have listened to our podcast long enough, listen to the my origin story about the one townhouse that really kind of helped me change my mentality. He was the contractor who I had arranged to refinish the kitchen cabinets for this woman I was helping, and he did an amazing job. And he did a couple jobs for me or for my clients. And at some point, he started transitioning his business, and I had to stop working with him. And he started doing things where he was getting paid with cryptocurrency. And this is like 12, 15 years ago. And
Wow.
he was I think he even said, well, I'm working with these guys who are selling pot. Again, might have been legal, but he was getting paid by these guys in cryptocurrency and wanted to know if I would pay him in cryptocurrency, but also then wanted to know if I could help him buy a house with cryptocurrency.
How
And
long ago was that?
this is like 12, 15 years ago. And
Oh, wow.
I think that it's been whitewashed so much that we forget that cryptocurrency really started as well, I mean, it is a non-government backed security, or, whatever the word is, currency, but it was used by criminal organizations to transfer money from organization to organization around the world.
Wow.
So it kind of has some dubious origins, and we are not making any commentary about it as a current asset or not. But at the time, there was, because of its tie to organized crime and things like he got it from a drug distributor, that there's nobody
Like,
was doing transactions with cryptocurrency. I think that there are a few title companies now that are venturing into that area as it's become more mainstream, but I, I,
wow.
I
So
was
I'm
like, yeah,
assuming you did not work with him.
I no, I had to stop working with him. I just couldn't take the chance, and also I couldn't compete with his other, what his other employers or people he was working with.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, Fortunately, I don't know of any stories of any of our clients laundering money or doing anything illegal. It seems for most of us, we read these stories and they're quite sensational and intriguing and feel like we should be on some, made for TV movie or something. But for most of us, it just means that if we're doing a cash transaction, which is still a small percentage of our clients, you're just going to have to demonstrate who you are, trace your funds, and escrow and title will help you navigate that with some forms and report that to the feds under the FinCEN,
FinCEN. Uh-huh.
Financial Crimes Enforcement Network policy.
We
Uh,
will probably know more about this as time goes on. The law goes into effect in just a couple months on December 1st.
yeah,
So
so December
the
1st, yeah.
closest I've come to money laundering is when I left a $20 bill in a sweater
Exactly,
and
right?
put it in the wash. So, and it
Yeah.
came out, it was so clean when it came out.
Oh, well, there's something to keep tabs of, I guess.
That's right.
All
Clean
right.
money.
Clean money. All right. Anything else we want to share about this week?
No, I think that's a lot. I think we're good.
Yeah. Well, an exciting topic, though, not necessarily applicable to most of us. Hopefully, it won't bog down our transactions like you mentioned. And
Yeah.
if you've got questions about this or any other topics about real estate, be sure to reach out to Sherry and I.
Yep.
Dorothy was right. There's no place like home. See you next time.
Bye-bye.